Hello, and we are live. This is episode 46, How Marketing Has Changed and Where It's Headed. And we could think of no better person to bring on to talk about this than Claudia Gilman, who Elena and I worked with many, many years ago, more years that either of us or any of us are willing to count.
Talk about, yeah.
We're talking about, so we won't talk about that, but we will talk about how marketing has changed in all that time. Claudia is an international marketing executive who has worked in the US, currently in Brazil. She works with companies, US companies that are looking to get into Latin America. And we're just super excited, Claudia, to have you on the show. And we'd love to hear what is on your mind.
Well, I actually have two things on my mind right now. One of them is patience. Okay. Remember back in the day, we needed to have a lot of patience to wait for 5 minutes of TV commercials before we could watch our favorite show or TV series, whatever we were watching. And now all we have to do is sign up for an ad-free plan, and that's it. We're free from everything.
Yes, so, our kids probably think that advertising is barbaric.
Exactly.
Our kids have no patience for anything.
No, not even for ad-free stuff.
And I will tell you, speaking of patience, even on the work side of things, I was telling I teach marketing at UMass Boston these days, and I was telling my students how it used to be that I would the Betamax video cassette would be FedExed from the agency, and you'd have to go get it at like the FedEx shop and like bring it back to the office. And now it's like everything is like streamed to you live and whatever. So yeah, I think even in it's not just in our media consumption, but even
It's funny because it used to be in our generation back then, and now it's with this generation because they don't have patience for anything.
Right. Well, they never had to wait. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. And then the second word I have is nostalgia. Okay. Because I really loved working with you guys. Eric was doing his high-tech stuff, but Jeff and Elena, I loved working at Nabisco, honestly, even though it was a very traditional consumer packaged goods company, but it did give me great friends. And also for me, it was the basis of my marketing knowledge. Yeah. Everything I learned then, I was able to apply throughout my career. So even though my outdated, it evolved.
I have a question for Elena and Jeff, because since you knew Claudia way back then, how did she do at predicting the future?
So Jeff said predicting the future for all of us meant SKU forecasting. Let's see how many Nutter Butters we're gonna sell here. So
right.
We were definitely not thinking. We were not thinking very far beyond, like next Thursday. maybe.
Right. It was 18 months out before we could launch anything.
Exactly.
Right?
What does
18 months these days, like we could have an entire new technology we've never heard of.
Right, exactly.
Well, and it's interesting. I don't know, Claudia, if how you've experienced this over the last 20 years, but I mean, like when we were at Nabisco, it was sort of like the very beginning of using like websites, right? Remember we had that whole there was like a whole Nabisco gaming site.
Yes, it was the Nabisco world. It was just games, right? They didn't talk about products.
Right.
They showed products. Remember, there used to be like Oreo houses or Chips Ahoy, like little. They're like placement.
Yeah,
that was our interaction, right?
Yes.
But we kind of have, that's kind of the content-based marketing that we have today, right? This is where, people go on YouTube and, I think you said something about Nutter Butter, like you can have like crazy videos that have nothing to do with sales per se, but just build the brand's identity. Yeah.
Right.
So terminology changed, but the concept remain, that you do have to drive awareness of your product and drive a relationship, really build a relationship with your product. overt or not so much.
Right. But
So,
back
Claudia,
then, we wanted to drive sales, right? What's the sales lift that you're going to get from that TV commercial, primetime TV? That was it, right? And how long it would take us to get to that report. You know, the season was over and we couldn't change anything because the ad was already produced. We spent millions of dollars and we couldn't change our marketing budget until the next fiscal year.
Right.
So it was like very hard to do anything. We had to really rely on our gut and consumer research to say, okay, this is the message that we want to go after. This is my one single message.
Right.
And that's it. And you run with it.
Well, and so I make fun of Jeff all the time because he's a marketer and he's always looking for perfection and actually all of you guys, I'm like, why do you care so much about every little detail in a post that's going to be seen by a few hundred people or whatever? But obviously, and Jeff always tells me it's because of this like you all grew up and professionally in this world where you got one shot. It costs a ton of money, and if you got it wrong, your career could be severely damaged. And that must have been,
It's all different now with the proliferation of content and really with the price to produce content, right? Of course, we're not talking about the Super Bowl right now, but if you're talking about influencers and micro influencers, this is all like content that lives a day, even if it goes viral, right? So the production value and the tactical value completely changed the name of the game, right? So it's just all, and I don't know if you remember when we had Ryan Ryan who found a micro influencing agency. So that was like, his point that, the world trusts real people's feedback, right? It's like consumer reports on TikTok, really.
Right. And you know what, Elena, you just reminded me of Oreo. I'm going to talk about Oreo now because how long it would take you to produce one Oreo commercial? How many phases of research and meetings and testings and redoing it? And
how much money?
Exactly. We would put into production, airing on TV because 80% of the budget would go to TV, right? And it was extremely expensive. So I remember when you used to go in meetings at 1 p.m. and leave at 7 p.m., I would be on the outside. Oh, that must have been a fun meeting.
Oh, yeah, long. And yes, months of it, absolutely. But again, now all of that is different because anybody can produce a video about Oreo and, edit it and put some, captions, and here we go.
Well, remember the Oreo commercial on Super Bowl during the blackout, Dunk in the Dark? That commercial was done immediately after the blackout, and Oreo became the talk of the town. I mean, when would you be able to do that back then? Never, right? And with minimal budget. How long did it take them and how much did they pay to create that piece of content?
Yeah.
It's also interesting though, actually this came up with my students yesterday as well, because I was talking about PR and it was like, I called it career day yesterday because I was talking about all the different careers in marketing because there's so many different things you can do. And so I was talking about PR and about crisis management, and that arena of marketing has changed so much. I mean, you can suddenly have a brand crisis because something happened. Like, I was working in the restaurant world. Something happened in your restaurant. We used to, at Cracker Barrel, something would happen at a Starbucks and suddenly we'd be trending in a negative way, just the ability of people to create, everyone to create content, not only has changed the way brands create content, but also how they have to protect their reputation. It's different.
And PR back in the day was just a press release. Remember, we would write a press release and send it to the media and hope they would publish it. It has nothing to do with PR today, right?
Right. Yes. I mean, we still used to do when I was running marketing at Cracker Barrel a couple of years ago, we did PR, we did press releases, but they were not the most impactful things that we did.
Right.
They were much more for the financial community than, for the listeners. But it's interesting, the conversation about controlling the value of the brand, managing your brand, right? And building your brand. We built it in a much more kind of controlled environment, so to speak, because the message was done by us and disseminated by us. Right now, many people, influencers and not, that have the tools, and if they have a desire to say something, they can say something, good or bad. Right. So you have to build the brand in a much more fluid and open environment, and know that to some degree, it's now the brand is it belongs to a community, much more so it belonging to their owner, so to speak.
Right. Which I think is good and is bad. It's good because we're there, instant gratification, changes, automations, and so forth. But up until what point did we lose track of the one thing? Right, that of the long-term brand strategy, because I think we still need to worry about that, right? Coca-Cola, Oreo, Chips Ahoy, big brands, you can't let it derail. But at the same time, you need to be there, fragmented in multiple channels with multiple messages.
Right.
I think it's just even that much harder. Because the strategy needs to be there, the message needs to be there, but you got to make sure that everybody got the message and interpreted it correctly, right? Because now it's much more left to the interpretation of many.
Right, exactly.
And it is not, the exercise is not, how do I talk about every, how do I say the same thing in every channel, but how do I make sure all the messages that I'm delivering are working together to deliver a common, sort of overarching message. And I think you're right. I think the fact that it is so easy to create content now has actually, the forces of fragmentation are much, much stronger than when we were doing marketing at Nabisco, so many years ago. I won't say the number, but it is so much easier to get thrown off or to get multiple messages, because that pressure, that constant pressure to drive sales tomorrow is so strong. And so it's like, okay, well, now I'm going to talk about this, and now I'm going to talk about that, and pretty soon you've got a decent sized budget that has been broken up into 50 different little messages, and none of them have a decent sized budget.
I'm gonna coin a new term. It's MADHD, marketing attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
It doesn't have to be marketing. The whole society, world, and humanity has ADHD. So why should marketing only on that? But I think interestingly, all the brands, businesses, everything has become niche, because everything is now fragmented because of the information exchange. Every little community can find their own product. So there's no longer one solution for all. It's many solutions for, many communities. And therefore it is ADHD, Eric, right? Because there is every solution is looking for their user. And therefore it's like this complex web of solutions bobbing around.
And our customers are also ADHD, so that we can relate to them and they can relate to us, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of ADHD, so Claudia, what crazy adaptation? What was the least expected adaptation you've had to make in, say, the last year and a half, particularly as this whole generative AI thing has been coming on? What was not, as they say, what was not on your bingo card this year that you had to?
Well, I have always been in marketing. I've done consumer packaged goods. I've done entertainment. I've done B2B services. But in the beginning, things moved slowly, right? In 2007, Facebook came. And we were like, oh, okay, what is this? To post pictures of my dog? And why do we need a brand page on Facebook? And how are people going to follow us? Right. Then came Instagram, and then YouTube. And then slowly you had to learn about advertising. Right. So I think in the beginning it was a gradual process, but then all of a sudden everything changed. You needed to know everything about programmatic media buying, about data consumption, about content creation, I mean, it wasn't hard. It's fun because I like crazy times and I like technology, but I think we as marketers had to change and adapt and be very flexible to the situation now. And you have the younger generation that is, was born in this world, right? And they know about that immediately. We had to learn, so I like the learning practice, but I always feel that I'm behind. Oh my God, something was launched tomorrow and I need to learn about that technology. And I'm already behind. Oh my God, I'm going to do something else. And I feel like it's very hectic now because we need to be on top of everything.
Yes.
And we're behind, all of us, at all times.
Right, right.
And I have another question, Claudia, to throw in here, is that how does international play into it, right? So you were in the US for a long time, now you're in Brazil. What do you see similar and what do you see different?
Interestingly enough, Latin America has a very deep penetration of the internet. I mean, everybody here, you don't have a TV, but you have a mobile phone or you have a laptop. Everybody needs to be on the internet. And the interaction is actually crazy. If you do an ad, if you post something, you get immediate reaction, engagement, interaction. It's really, I was surprised, right? Because I came here a few years ago. When you think of Latin America, you think, oh, they're way behind, right? But no, people have mobile phones and don't have TV, or don't have fresh water, but they do have mobile phones, and there's
this phenomenon of sort of skipping steps in some countries where they didn't have all the infrastructure from the previous technology, and then they jump, and actually in some ways that actually puts those countries ahead in a lot of ways that the US and Europe or whatever are just going to trail because we're so busy doing what we've always done.
Right. And I've seen some campaigns here that I would never thought would happen in the US. I won't be able to name them, but they were like so creative because it was in store, it was on the street, it was in your face online, on TV, and everything was interacting all together. And I was like, wow, everywhere I look, I see this brand. So I mean, I don't want to brag, but we're very creative people. We get a lot of awards, advertising awards. So I think we're not afraid of trying new things.
And why don't you want to brag, Claudia? You should.
I should, right?
Amazing. Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm just being humble.
If you do the thumbs up, will you get the thing?
Let's see if it. Sometimes the bubbles come up. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take the credit for it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, as we were talking earlier about fragmentation, I was thinking about a different aspect of fragmentation, which is not so much on the message side, but on the job side. I mean, when we were marketers at Nabisco, like there were brand managers and associate managers, and there might have been like maybe a consumer promotions person here or there, whatever. But now it's like you have digital marketers and content marketers and SEO experts and email experts, and you have all these different almost fragmented pieces. And I wonder what your thought is on that, because for me, it seems like marketing is becoming almost more of technical field as opposed to a strategic discipline.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because we used to work in silos, right? Marketing was the hub of everything.
Right.
And we wouldn't necessarily work with product development to influence our marketing campaign, or, the consumer promotion department or whatever. We would do everything and then disseminate the information, the new product. Sales would distribute it. Consumer promotion would do their thing. But now I think not only everything is very, you have to be a specialist in something, which
Right.
is harder to find a job, because I'm not a specialist in SEO.
Right.
I'm a brand marketer. So even the job offering now are, growth. There's so many different growth marketer, SEO specialist, social media management, CRM management. But I think now marketing had to learn how to work cross-functionally, because we need to, it's not just our message, it influences what R&D is doing. For example, Nike has their regular campaign, but they have wearables and they have in-store promotions, and everything needs to be one experience, right? So I think marketing had to learn how to work cross-functionally for one cohesive message and interaction with the brand.
Yeah, and but I think your point about the job thing is really interesting, because a couple years ago I was looking for a new marketing job, and I was running into that same problem of like, you've never like done search or whatever. You just let it. And I was like, well, I led a team that did a digital.
Exactly what the agency used to do it for us.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, but you've never done it. And I think it's an interesting question, because I agree marketing had to / has to learn how to do all this stuff in a cohesive way. What my fear is that we won't learn how to do it in a cohesive way. Number one. And number two is, I think the other thing that's going to get really interesting is, to what extent are some of these very technical marketing roles that have grown up in the last 10, 15 years going to get essentially AI'd out of existence, and the human marketers are actually going to need to be the people that know how to basically do the strategy again, like
and how to put all these pieces together, and how to make sure to think through all of that. Absolutely.
So maybe brand marketers like us will be back in vogue in a year or so.
Yeah, because we used to manage a business, right? We used to manage everything related to that business. Nowadays, I don't even know if there is such a term like a brand manager or a product manager, but you just manage that one piece, right? And everything else does their own thing. So I think you're right. I think with the advent of AI and technology, some of those positions are going away and will become in vogue again.
Well, actually, I was just talking to a guy about this transition. He's at a company that is doing what we were calling GEO last time, generative optimization.
SEO for AI, yeah.
SEO for AI. And he was talking about, it was so interesting to talk to this guy. He's going to be on the podcast probably in April. And he was talking about the fact that you have to not only manage like where you are in the rankings, but also what is AI's perception of your company. He was like saying like, well, Enron does not come out looking great when you Google it.
Right. Well, why.
Yeah, no, but I mean, the point is like you could end up with a negative, AI opinion of you, and now you have to manage this thing's opinion of you, not just where your rankings are. So yeah, Jeff, sorry I interrupted your Chat GPT questions.
No, I was going to say we've gotten to the point in the episode where Chat GPT likes to ask questions. So I usually ask the question, would you like absurd first or thought-provoking first?
My first interaction with Chat GPT, I'm talking to a machine, right? So I don't know if I should be polite and say, "Hi, how are you? Could you please do this for me?" And then he would do it, but not in a great way. So I would say, "Hi, sorry, you made a mistake. Could you fix that?" And then the third time I would say, "I'm done, just do it." I don't say please, I don't say thank you. I'm like, just do it.
Well,
Okay.
all right. I'll pick the first one. I'm gonna go with this first question. I'm gonna ask you. So I asked it, what are 10 funny questions to ask an international marketer?
Oh, great.
I would say they really aren't that funny. But all right, the first one was, how do you politely say this idea is terrible during a meeting with a global client? What's the first question?
It's hard because, like, I think if you are in Brazil, for example, we don't know how to say no. There's actually like books on how to make business in Brazil because we don't know how to say no. So if you're talking, for example, with a buyer at Walmart, right? No, if you are the buyer, let's say I'm the buyer at Walmart here in Brazil, and you came to introduce your new product, and now I would just give you compliments. I'm going to say, "You're great. Yes, I want to launch this. Let's meet, blah, blah, blah," because we don't know how to not be polite. I think that's part of the culture where America is like, damn, right?
Yeah.
You know where you don't know. And so people, if they come to Brazil, they get confused because, oh, she said yes. She said she liked the product. She said she would meet with me, but she never, decides when, what time, when can we launch the product. So we put the person in a situation that it's like, I don't know, how to do this. So the company that I work for actually does a seminar on how to do business in Brazil. So you can learn who you're dealing with. It's very cultural, right? Because it's funny, when I went to the US, I was sort of like that, very careful, and I wouldn't be direct. And then when I moved back, people were like, "Claudia, you can't be that direct. You're very impolite. You can't say right to their faces," So we have to learn the culture because there are some nuances that are very different from country to country.
Yeah. Well,
did I answer your question?
Yeah. Well, you answered ChatGPT's question.
Okay.
All right, ChatGPT. Here's another one. What's the most bizarre product you've ever had to market internationally?
Oh God.
Squatty potty.
I've done traditional stuff like,
Right. Nothing weird.
packaged goods. Then I've done entertainment.
Any weird entertainment?
No, it wasn't nothing weird.
Are there any like weird flavors that didn't...
like medical uniforms, which for me was weird coming from, the other companies that I worked for. But
are there ever any flavors?
Launch something bizarre. I would love to have that idea, actually.
Yeah, you're like a good experience for the future. Are there any flavors you've ever had to like roll out where like the US was like you're pushing for something and it didn't make any sense in Brazil or vice versa?
Oh, you know what? I see this happening now because now there's Oreo everything.
Yes.
Right. And then when I see them hitting the shelves in Brazil, I'm like, who's going to eat that? Absolutely. We don't even know what cranberries are.
Or pickle flavored Oreos. It's just weird.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because I remember Elena and I worked on the Golden Oreo launches. I think there were multiple launches, whatever. But I remember sort of feeling, oh my gosh, we've kind of ruined the equity of Oreo. We've white cookies and chocolate cream or whatever it was we did was like okay as a promotion, but like the moment it became like a full product, I'm like, I don't know whether this is the right thing to do. And yet now it's like, there was literally do y'all remember Brand Camp? The cartoons. There was one that was like, it was literally about Oreo, and it was like making fun of how there was like double the stuff, twice, 3 times the stuff, 4 times the stuff, half the stuff, whatever, and all this stuff. And they literally, it's like instead of looking at that Brand Camp cartoon from whatever that was, 2000 and whatever, and going, oh, this is a bad idea. Somebody was like, oh, this is a great blueprint. Let's just see if we can launch all of these things. I mean, they have birthday cake, they have carrot cake, they have, I don't know, it's just,
Yeah.
I just find
No,
it strange.
the weirdest one for me, I tried recently. I don't know if they have this promotion in the US, Oreo and Coca-Cola.
I tried them last week. Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It's
So
a Coca-Cola
I
flavored.
tried the Coca-Cola flavored Oreo, and I personally didn't like it. And then I tried the Oreo flavored Coke, and it was okay, actually. But I don't think it's something long term. I don't think people are going to get, oh my God, I need to go get that. It's probably more of a promotional thing, right?
So I tried the cookies and I liked them. I didn't realize until my wife tried them and didn't like them that there were Pop Rocks in them, which is funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like they actually like, popped your mouth.
Yeah.
Funny because I feel like we probably tested that concept like every year for
The Pop Rock.
Finally got it into the cookies.
Yeah.
And then
All right,
it never happened, or it was too expensive, or people thought Pop Rocks killed Mikey. I don't know, whatever it was.
Right.
Well,
Right.
it killed the experience. Remember, the experience was supposed to be the crunchy and smooth rather than crunchy and crunchy.
Yeah, so maybe it just took this long of like this many years of like equity erosion for people like, yeah, it's fine, go ahead, put Pop Rocks.
Yeah. I mean, when would we launch an Oreo flavored soda?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that seems like an odd one. So my question here for you, Claudia, my next question, just because we work with smaller companies. I think all three of Jeff and Elena and I, we all work with smaller size companies, and I'm just kind of wondering from that small company, startup company type perspective, what are some things that people need to be thinking of, when they're not Oreo, they're not Coca-Cola, they're not something big? Like what is it all the same, or are there things that smaller companies need to be kind of keeping their eye on that are different?
Well, I worked for big companies with big budgets, but I also worked for startups. I worked twice for a skincare startup in the US and a gelato startup in Brazil. When I came in, it was just me, the founder, and the investor. And I'm like, where's the consumer promotion department? Where is the finance department? Where is your agency? So I think, and this is something that we had to learn as marketers, right? You want to work for a small company or for a startup, there's nothing like that. It's you and God. And I had to learn how to do my own consumer promotion or be creative and find, an agency in Thailand that does a good job at developing your logo or packaging. And so you really need to roll up your sleeves and do everything. And not everybody can do that, I think.
And that's, by the way, when you learn the SEO, the CRM, the programmatic, and all that good stuff, because then there is nobody else. So you learn.
Exactly.
And we did.
And I think it's a challenge. I mean, I went through a variety of, business models and companies. But I see a lot of people struggling. If you come from a big company with big budgets and everybody to support you, a lot of people don't make it.
Right.
Because they can, they don't know how to work without that support. So I had to learn a lot of things from scratch. I actually, when I moved to Brazil, I co-founded a gelato company. Because my partner, he was a gelato addict. And during the pandemic, if you order gelato at home, it would come, in a plastic jar, or it would melt, or the next day it would be crystallized and everything. So he had this idea, said, I'm going to make the best gelato. We're going to create a brand. We're going to do in a really nice packaging, and we're going to do our own delivery. We are not going to let, DoorDash or whatever, because my client would be paying a lot of money for this product, and I want the product to get to their homes from the factory. So when I started, I'm like, okay, so how do consumers order the product from me? Okay, I had to learn and search for an app that would do that. Then I had to learn and search for an app that would do the finance, and then the logistics, and then this and that. I didn't know any of that before, when and I didn't have to know any of it before, I came to
fun
this
and
company.
stressful at the same time, right?
Right, right. So I learned how to do a lot of funny things that I wouldn't do before. I even interviews like drivers because we wanted to get the right people to deliver the right product. So,
Right. Well,
So,
this is
yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say this is an incredible conversation, and it has flown by as promised. So we always go around and have everybody give one thing they want to take away. And Eric usually does this part, but he likes to say we always let the guest go first, so you have less time to think. So Claudia, what's one thing you would want our audience to take away from this discussion?
I think is learn as you go and learn fast. We can't wait. We can't do trainings or anything like that. Be online, learn, and, roll up your sleeves and do it. And don't be afraid. I think a lot of people are afraid of technology.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'll go next, and thank you, Claudia. Before I go though, and tell my one thing, what is the best place for people to connect with you?
On LinkedIn, it's Claudia Gilman. I'll send you the link and then you can post it.
Awesome. We will do that. Well, this has been a terrific conversation. I just think it's fascinating. I guess the one thing I'll take away is just to talk for a few minutes about how much marketing has really changed in the last, whatever years, has been incredible. And it's been really fascinating to be on that journey. And I guess, it'll be really fascinating to see what comes next because the technology keeps changing faster and faster. So
right.
I will pass it over to Elena.
Yes, and I'll pick it up with faster and faster and how we need to be more and more nimble and learn more and more and just stay ahead of the curve because the curve changes and the market changes and the customers' relationships with the products change by virtue of their relationship with information changing so fast. So yeah, we're on an accelerating path here.
And yeah, I'm gonna fourth, I guess, the adaptability and speed. One thing I just want to leave the audience with is really Pop Rocks and Coca-Cola flavored Oreos. That's kind of crazy. That was not on my bingo card at all. I was not expecting that, that flavor. So anyway, Claudia, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fascinating and really educational discussion. And we thank you for coming on the show.
And thank you for joining me, letting me join you. And it's been a pleasure reconnecting with you guys.
Likewise.
Thank you.
And see that we're still the same.
Yes, we're also. Thanks.
All right, guys.
Bye.